Hello, welcome back to our VirtualBox tutorial series. This is the second lesson, and if you missed the first one, we covered the basics of virtualization, introduced virtual machines, and installed Oracle VirtualBox. Today, we're stepping it up. We'll install two operating systems, Windows 11 and Kali Linux. For Windows 11, I'll show you how to do a manual installation using an ISO file. And for Kali Linux, we'll use a pre-configured VirtualBox package, which makes things super easy. By the end of this lesson, you'll know two different ways to set up virtual environments. Let's dive in. Now, when you open VirtualBox, you'll notice a few key sections. The file menu lets you manage settings and media like virtual disks and ISO files. The machine menu is where you create, manage, and control your virtual machines. And if you ever need help, the help menu gives you access to guides and support. Below that, the Tools section in VirtualBox gives you tools for managing the overall system and resources, not just the virtual machines. It helps you configure and manage your virtual machines more easily. In this section, you'll see the virtual machines you've installed. Right now, it's empty because there are no virtual machines. After you create, it will look like this. In VirtualBox, Preferences lets you adjust general settings. Import and Export help you bring in or send out virtual machines. New creates a new virtual machine, and Add lets you add an existing one. These options make managing virtual machines simpler. Right below, in the section that says Welcome to VirtualBox, you can see the details of a virtual machine when you select one. It shows technical settings for the virtual machine or details when you choose an option from the Tools menu. This is what it looks like after adding a virtual machine. This is a simple overview of VirtualBox's interface. Now we'll set up a virtual machine, and as we do, we'll discover many of the features in the interface. There are two ways to install an operating system in VirtualBox. The first method is to download the ISO file and perform a fresh installation. We will use this method to install Windows 11. The second method is to download a pre-installed virtual machine in formats like OVA, OVF, or VBox from the operating system's website. We will use this method to install Kali Linux. To download Windows 11, I visit Microsoft's website. From there, I can either download the Create Windows 11 Installation Media tool or choose the option under Download Windows 11 Disk Image for x64 devices to get the Windows 11 ISO file. I'll choose the faster option under the second section. After selecting the version, I click Download Now, choose the language and confirm. Then I start the download. To download Kali Linux, I visit the website kali.org, which you can also find by searching online. Once on the site, there are two options: Installer Images and Virtual Machines. If I choose Installer Images, I'll download the ISO file. However, by selecting Virtual Machines, I can download pre-configured images designed for virtualization software. When installing an operating system on a virtual machine using OVA, OVF, or VBox files is a very convenient method. However, there is an important point to consider when downloading such files. I recommend downloading operating system files only from the official website of the manufacturer or trusted sources. Files downloaded from third-party, untrustworthy sites may contain viruses or malware that could harm your system. Therefore, it's crucial to obtain operating system files only from trusted sources to ensure their integrity. I select the Download VirtualBox version option from the Virtual Machines page. Now that we've completed both downloads, we can proceed with the installation of the operating systems. First, I will install Windows 11. To create a new virtual machine in VirtualBox, I start by clicking the New button on the interface. This opens a window with 4 distinct sections, each designed to configure the settings for the virtual machine being created. In VirtualBox version 7.1, when this window is first displayed, it may initially show the old version view. However, after a short while, it transitions to the new version view, even without a software update. In the updated view, the sections that were previously divided into 4 separate pages are now combined into a single streamlined interface. You can still configure the same settings by navigating through the respective sections in the new layout. When creating a new virtual machine in VirtualBox, the first part is the Name and Operating System section. Name. This field allows you to specify a name for your virtual machine. For example, you can name it Ubuntu or Windows 11 to make it easier to identify. In this field, I am assigning the name Windows 11 to the virtual machine I will create, making it easier to identify. Folder. This section specifies the directory where the virtual machine files will be stored. By default, the VirtualBox directory is selected, but you can change this location if you prefer to store the files elsewhere. I will use the default directory. ISO image. In this section, you need to select an ISO file for the operating system you plan to install on your virtual machine. The ISO file serves as the installation media for the operating system. I will proceed by selecting the Windows11.iso file edition. This refers to the specific version of the operating system you intend to install. For example, for Windows, it could be the Home or Pro edition. Type. In this section, you need to select the type of operating system you want to run on the virtual machine. For example, options like Linux, Windows, macOS, and others will be available. Subtype. This specifies a more specific category of the operating system. For example, if you choose Linux, you might select a subtype such as Ubuntu or Kali version. Here, you specify the version of the operating system you want to install. For example, options like Ubuntu or Windows 11 will be available. Skip unattended installation. VirtualBox can perform an automatic installation if the selected operating system supports unattended installation. VirtualBox defines the operating system to be installed using the ISO file. This option is available if the operating system supports unattended installation by VirtualBox. If it doesn't, the option will be inactive, and the installation process must be carried out manually. The second section is the unattended install field. This area is active when the skip unattended installation option in the previous section is not selected. It simplifies the operating system installation process by automating steps such as selecting the language, creating a username, and setting a password, which are typically part of a manual installation. This feature enables a faster and more effortless installation. The third area is the hardware section. Here, you define the hardware resources required by the virtual machine. Allocating these resources correctly is crucial for achieving balanced performance between the virtual machine and the host system. Base memory. This determines the amount of RAM to be allocated to the virtual machine. RAM is a critical resource for the proper functioning of the operating system. Processors. This sets the number of CPU cores that the virtual machine can use. Allocating more cores increases the virtual machine's processing power. For tasks that require intensive processing, you can assign a higher number of cores. When determining the memory and processor's values, there are several important considerations. The memory and processor's values should not be set below the minimum system requirements of the operating system you're installing. Setting values lower than the required minimum can lead to error messages or an interrupted installation process. Allocating resources beyond the red area, which indicates excessive use of system resources, means there will be insufficient resources left for the physical host machine, potentially causing both the host system and the virtual machine to slow down or freeze. The RAM and processor power allocated to the virtual machine should meet the minimum system requirements of the operating system to be run. However, these values must also be set to ensure that the host system has enough resources to run its own operating system and applications without issues. Therefore, the resources allocated to the virtual machine must strike a balance between these two requirements. Allocating resources at the minimum system requirements level required by the virtual operating system will result in insufficient resources for the virtual machine's operations, potentially impacting its performance. The performance required for tasks within the virtual machine also influences the amount of resources allocated. For example, if the virtual machine is only running light tasks, such as a web browser or basic applications, less RAM and fewer processor cores may be sufficient. However, if resource-intensive tasks, such as video editing or running a database, need to be performed, more resources should be allocated considering the specific requirements of these tasks. It is also crucial to ensure that enough resources remain available for the host system, especially if performance-demanding tasks are being executed on the host while the virtual machine is running. For example, if the host computer is handling tasks that require significant processing power and memory, such as video editing, large file transfers, or gaming, the resources allocated to the virtual machine should be adjusted accordingly to avoid performance issues. When running multiple virtual machines, balancing the memory and processors is critical to maintaining the performance of both the host and the virtual machines. First, enough resources must be left for the host system's operating system and background processes. When allocating RAM, at least 30-40% of the total memory should be reserved for the host system. For example, in a system with 16 GB of RAM, a maximum of 10 to 12 GB can be allocated to the virtual machines. Similarly, the entire CPU cores should not be allocated among virtual machines. At least 25 to 30% of the total processing power should be reserved for the host system to ensure smooth operation. The third section is the hard disk area. In the hard disk section, you configure the storage space that the virtual machine will use. Here, you can create a new virtual hard disk based on your virtual machine's needs, use an existing disk file, or choose not to add a hard disk. Create a virtual hard disk now. This option creates a new virtual hard disk for the virtual machine. The virtual disk functions like a physical disk, used to store the operating system installation and other files of the virtual machine. When selecting this option, you need to specify the disk size and storage type, such as dynamically allocated or fixed size. This is typically the preferred option when installing a new operating system. Use an existing virtual hard disk file. This option allows you to mount a virtual hard disk file that was previously created or used in another virtual machine. The file functions as the disk for the virtual machine, containing an operating system or data that is already installed. This option is useful when you want to restart an existing virtual machine, share a disk file, or use a pre-configured disk from another project. Do not add a virtual hard disk. This option allows you to proceed without adding a hard disk to the virtual machine. In this case, the virtual machine can only be used for specific scenarios that are designed to run an operating system, but it will not have any storage space for files or data unless a hard disk is added later. After making the necessary settings in the four sections, name and operating system, memory, processors, and hard disk, if you click Finish, you will have completed the configuration for creating the virtual machine and its associated disk. At this point, if you did not select the Skip Unattended Installation option during setup, the virtual machine will automatically start and the unattended installation process will begin. In the case of unattended installation, the virtual machine will proceed with the installation of the operating system from the selected ISO or pre-configured installation media without requiring user intervention. This means that the installation process will run automatically, using the preset configurations such as language, time zone, user credentials, and other options defined in the unattended installation file, streamlining the setup process. If you choose to skip unattended installation, the virtual machine will start but will wait for your intervention to manually start and install it during the installation process, where you will need to make choices such as choosing the installation language, partitioning the disk, etc. In order to show you the Windows 11 installation process, I will go back and complete the installation by selecting Skip Unattended Installation. I start the virtual machine by double-clicking on its name from the left menu. After starting, I am greeted with the installation screen. I will follow the installation steps for Windows 11 in order. First, I proceed by selecting the language and keyboard. I confirm that I will install Windows 11. Then I continue by accepting that my data will be deleted. At this stage, I do not have a license, so I will not enter any license information. I proceed by selecting I do not have a product key. I proceed by selecting the Windows 11 Pro version. I accept the license agreement. After creating a disk partition by clicking on Create Partition, I begin the installation by clicking Next and Install. This stage will take about 10 minutes. At this stage of the Windows 11 installation, unlike older versions of Windows, you cannot continue without an internet connection. If your host machine is connected to the internet, the virtual machine will directly access the internet through your host machine. I select the country and proceed by choosing the keyboard layout. I am asked to specify a device name. I am skipping this. I proceed by selecting Setup for personal use. At this stage, you are prompted to log in with a Microsoft account. Unfortunately, during the installation phase of Windows 11, it is not possible to define a local user. However, after the installation is complete, you can create a local user by disconnecting your internet connection. I proceed by clicking Sign In and entering my Microsoft username and password. After successfully logging in, I set up a PIN as an additional security measure. I then continue by selecting my usage preferences during the setup process, which helps customize the system according to my needs. Once all the installation processes are completed, you will be directed to the Windows 11 desktop environment, where you can start using your operating system. After completing the Windows installation, I select the Insert Guest Additions CD image option from the Devices menu in VirtualBox. This action adds a virtual disk to the virtual machine. I then open this disk and perform the installation it contains. This installation provides several enhancements, enables higher resolutions and better graphics performance, allows more precise cursor movement and improved integration within the virtual machine, facilitates easy file transfers between the host computer and the virtual machine, enhances overall system performance and responsiveness. We have installed a virtual machine with the Windows 11 operating system from scratch using the new option in VirtualBox and an ISO file. Now we will import the Kali Linux operating system, which was created on another device, using the Add option in VirtualBox. This option is used to add virtual machines to VirtualBox that have been previously created elsewhere and saved in a file format such as a .vbox or .ova. This method eliminates the need to configure the virtual machine from scratch. This option is used to add virtual machines to VirtualBox that have been previously created elsewhere and saved in a file format such as .vbox or .ova. By using this method, you can import an existing virtual machine, eliminating the need to configure the virtual machine from scratch. It simplifies the process by directly adding the virtual machine to your VirtualBox environment, allowing you to quickly start using it. Virtual machines are powerful tools that help protect your system's security, but it is crucial to ensure that the virtual machine or disk file being used comes from a trusted source. Files like .ova or .vbox can potentially contain malware or security vulnerabilities, which could compromise your system's integrity. To minimize risks, always verify the authenticity of the source before importing or running any virtual machine files. Here, the operating system that I will add as a virtual machine will be the file that I downloaded from the official website of Kali Linux, kali.org, at the beginning of the video. I'm extracting files from a .7z archive. The files that come out have two types of extensions, .vbox and .vdi, which are related to the virtual machine. A .vbox file is a configuration file used by VirtualBox to store the virtual machine's settings. A .vdi file, short for virtual disk image, is a virtual hard drive used by VirtualBox. It stores the virtual machine's data, including the operating system. To add a virtual machine in VirtualBox, I click the Add option and select the .vbox file from the directory. There's no need to manually select the VD file because the VBox file already includes the virtual machine's configuration, which automatically mounts the associated VDA file. After selecting the VBox file, I can see that Kali Linux is ready to go. You can start it right away by double-clicking on it. When the operating system starts, it prompts for a username and password. The organization that developed the OS typically provides the default login credentials in their official resources. You can find this information on the download page or in the documentation section of Kali Linux's official website. After entering the password, you'll be taken to the Kali Linux desktop environment, confirming that you've logged in successfully. The desktop provides a visual interface showing that the operating system has started and is functioning properly. In this lesson, we successfully installed two operating systems in VirtualBox, Windows 11 using an ISO file and Kali Linux using a pre-configured package. You now have the knowledge to set up virtual environments using two distinct methods. In the next lesson, we'll take a deep dive into the VirtualBox interface. We'll explore settings in the Preferences menu, tools for importing and exporting virtual machines, customizing virtual machine configurations, and working with advanced features like snapshots, logs, activity tracking, and file management. Thank you for watching.